Unukut, good evening. My name is Rachel Blais, and I'm the Executive Director of Qajuqturvik Community Food Center in Iqaluit, Nunavut. Food insecurity among Inuit in Canada has been called one of the longest-lasting public health emergencies in Canadian history. 3 in 4 adult Inuit in Nunavut are food insecure. As food insecurity continues to increase, it is clear that current strategies are failing. They are failing because food security in the North cannot exist without food sovereignty. Food sovereignty is the right to culturally appropriate food harvested through ecologically sound and sustainable methods. Food sovereignty in Inuit Nunavut can only be met when Inuit have control over their own food system. The path to achieving a food sovereign system has been researched, recorded, and delivered to our governments by Inuit leadership in recent years. It has also been identified as a key step towards reconciliation. Food sovereignty asserts that people have a right to local food. Despite the myth that the Canadian Arctic is a barren food desert, there is, in fact, a vibrant local food system in the North that could be used to address this crisis. In Nunavut, locally sourced food is country food, and food producers are Inuit hunters. Country food comes from the land and sea and includes Arctic char, seal, muskox, caribou, whale, walrus, clams, berries, to name just a few. Country foods are extremely nutritious and widely preferred to store-bought foods. Prior to colonization, Inuit moved with the seasons, ensuring that a steady source of country food was always available. Acting as environmental stewards, hunters protected the land and waters to ensure the survival of their communities. With their communities now facing the highest levels of food insecurity in the country, hunters are the frontline workers keeping people fed through the use of sharing networks. Beginning in the mid-1900s, colonial powers attempted to destroy Nunavut's food system. A series of federal policies disconnected Inuit from the land and altered their way of life. As a result of these policies and the culling of their sled dogs, hunters had to purchase snowmobiles and gas if they wanted to hunt and feed their families. To be able to purchase these items, hunters were forced to participate in the wage economy, further disconnecting them from the land. Prior to these colonial policies, prolonged periods of food scarcity among Inuit were extremely rare. Today, hunting is very expensive, and many hunters have to subsidize the activity by working a 9-to-5. This limits the amount of time hunters can spend out on the land and the freedom to harvest when the weather and movements of animals are right. As hunting becomes more expensive and more hunters are forced to participate in the wage economy, hunting is declining in Nunavut. As a result, there is less country food distributed through sharing networks and more people relying on store-bought food. Most perishable foods imported into Nunavut are eligible for a subsidy through the federal government's Nutrition North program. Northern retailers receive a subsidy meant to offset the transportation costs of eligible food and other essential items. In theory, these savings are meant to be passed on to the consumer. To this day, country foods are not eligible for the subsidy. In 2011, the year that Nutrition North was introduced, food insecurity rates in Nunavut increased by 6% and have continued to rise ever since. Country food is making up less of people's diets than even a few decades ago. At the same time, there is a wide income gap between Inuit and non-Inuit in the territory, and a cost of living that is 2 to 3 times the national average. This means that many Nunavummiut cannot afford store-bought food, even after it's been subsidized. To achieve food sovereignty, we must move away from policies that only seek to address food security. Food insecurity in Nunavut was created by colonial powers, and current policies have only seemed to perpetuate the issue. To achieve food sovereignty, we must make sure that Inuit have a say in all decisions affecting their land and food system. We must listen and we must act. Inuit organizations have identified that substantial investments in infrastructure are urgently needed. For example, Nunavut has very little marine infrastructure despite the fact that so much country food can be found in the sea. The entire territory has one small craft harbor. In comparison, Saskatchewan has 12. We must also create new policies that directly support hunters. Hunters should be paid fairly for the vital work that they provide. Just like anywhere else in the country, food insecurity is not a food problem, it's an income problem. Ultimately, the key food producers in the most food insecure region in the country should not have to live in poverty in order to provide their communities with food. Food insecurity in Nunavut is only continuing to worsen, showing that the status quo doesn't work. Neither food security or food sovereignty will be reached by continuing to focus on costly imported food while ignoring the local food system that is right there in front of us. Canada is one of the most food-wealthy nations in the world, and that includes the abundance of country food. We must meaningfully address food insecurity in the North by first listening to the recommendations that Inuit have put forward. We must dispel the myth that the Canadian Arctic is a barren food desert, and support a vibrant local food system that is key to achieving food sovereignty in Nunavut. Kuyanami, thank you.